And joining us to talk about it is draft analyst Kennedy Paynter from drafttech.com. He's been with us before. Focuses on the Redskins, but covers the draft as a whole and has been outstanding with us when we've had him, and we welcome him back into the program. Good morning, Kennedy.
Good morning. How have you been doing with all the kind of changes in our world these days?
Best I can, like everyone else, just trying to manage and trying to be socially responsible, and at the same time continue to work and talk about sports, even though there has not been a lot of sports actively going on, clearly none, but this draft, man, has kept us busy. And I, for one, am glad that we're going to have it next Thursday night. How do you feel about going on with it? They're doing it in a safe manner. Nobody's going to be at the same place at the same time. So if you can do it like that, I'm all for it.
I absolutely agree. I think that American people in general will need a distraction, want a distraction. And even if you're not an NFL fan, it is something, it's sports to kind of consume. And that's really all we have in the sports world right now. And in addition, they're going to raise a lot of money between the three broadcasts that they're planning on doing for the efforts against COVID. So I think it's going to be a good sports distraction, and it's also going to be good as far as raising money. So I think altogether the NFL is doing the right thing by moving forward.
Right on. Let's get to it. We're going to break down the Alabama players that are potentially going to be drafted. I'm sure that I'm positive 9 of them will be. Shaheem Carter, I'll get your thoughts on him in a moment. But let's begin with Tua, who is the most polarizing player in this draft because you see the talent, you know the ability. He's special as a passer. But as I've said many times on this program, the question isn't ability, it is durability, which leads to question of availability, which is the most important thing you can have in the National Football League. Now, he's a guy that if you don't take him, you pass on him and he goes on and he's a star somewhere else, the GM could be in trouble. If you do take him and medically he doesn't ever get to where you need him to be, you could lose your job that way. So there's a lot of risk reward here with Tua. What's your projection on him?
You said it just right. The best ability is availability, and it's tough to project that with Tua. Beyond just the hip and the ankles, he always seemed to me to be hobbling around the field. It's almost that Ben Roethlisberger type when you watch, and just always playing through some kind of injury, and kudos to him for being tough and playing through his injuries. But it makes you nervous when you're putting draft stock into a player like that, especially if you're talking trading up, whether it's number 3 or number 4, or whether you're giving up more capital to go get a guy like that. I love Tua as far as his skill set, and if you told me he could be healthy for 10, 15 years, then he would be my top quarterback. But you can't say that. So obviously, Burrow is the safer pick. Burrow's right there with him, really. But because of the injury issues with Tua, and again, not just the public ones, but the fact that he's normally hobbling around the field, it seems that would kind of scare me away from trading up. Now, would I take him if I was, between 5 and 10, picking between 5 and 10, and need your quarterback? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't be mortgaging my future to trade up for him.
Who do you think will wind up? Do you think the Dolphins will take him at 5, or do you think he might fall down to number 6 and the Chargers grab him? Who do you project him to?
Man, it's funny. I had this early feeling that the Chargers were going to be trying to jump Miami to get there, and now everyone's talking about Herbert being Miami's pick. So if I had to bet, I still would have to stick with Miami because I think Tua is so much higher above Herbert, and I think that this latest push from Herbert's camp, I think, is probably just draft talk, and not everybody's telling the truth this time of year. But I would guess Miami, but I would give Miami a 50% chance, and the Chargers maybe 45.
Let's get to the 2 receivers, Judy and Ruggs. First, who do you have rated higher, and then second part of the question, where do you slot Judy and Ruggs in the draft?
So Jerry Jeudy's my top receiver out of all the receivers. CeeDee Lamb would be second, and then Ruggs would be third for me. Jeudy can uncover at all levels of the field. Mm-hmm. He's a very smooth operator with his speed. He's very much actually like Calvin Ridley. I actually think he's sort of the plus version of Calvin Ridley. If you're talking former Alabama receivers, he's kind of between Amari Cooper and Calvin Ridley, and you can kind of think of him that way. Guys that can uncover anywhere on the field, they stick in the NFL. They produce in the NFL as long as they stay healthy. So I think Judy's a safe pick. And then Ruggs, he has that speed, and that's what everyone talks about. But I think it's underrated that he actually succeeded outside as an outside receiver. Judy, a lot of times, is in the slot, and many of the receivers this year, including Lamb and Justin Jefferson, were primarily slot players. So the fact that Ruggs, at his size, could succeed on the outside, hardly ever drop passes, and could still uncover and make plays, I think that that's an underrated aspect of the game.
What two teams, and I know, again, this is just projecting, but what team do you think winds up selecting Jeudy, and what team you think will take Ruggs, and about where you think they'll go in the draft?
It's hard. I think they're both going to go into teams. I don't see either one of them getting out of the teams. I think Jerry Jeudy would be perfect for the Jets. Sam Darnold needs a guy that he can trust, that can uncover quickly, and can uncover on sort of those 3rd down and 10 plays where you either need some sort of bench route or an outside route. And I think that Jeudy would be great in that role. He also has underrated playmaking ability, so I think that he'd be perfect there for the Jets. I think the Raiders would love a guy with a speed like Ruggs, so I don't think that he gets past their second pick, as long as, assuming they don't take CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy with their first pick. But I don't see either one of them getting out of the team.
I'd love to see Ruggs wind up with the Raiders. I think that'd be a good fit for him. Let's talk about Jedrick Wills, the tackle, and this is a good draft class, or appears to be, for tackles. He is athletic. Man, I've watched him play. He is so light on his feet, but he's played right tackle. And, to be a guy that's projected as high as he's being projected, I'm thinking most teams are going to look to move him to left tackle. Am I right in that assessment? And do you have him as a top 10 type pick?
I do. He's my top tackle. I think he's the prototype. He is, that dancing bear that can really move. He's a technician. I think that he's a very solid player overall, and he's going to be a guy that could at least serviceably start. I think he has a high floor, as well as a high ceiling. So I think that you're getting at least a good starter, if not an all-pro in him. It is hard to project how he would do on the left. It's a completely different set of skills. The assumption, obviously, is that he was on the right side because Tua is a left-handed quarterback. But I still think that most teams are going to be projecting him to the left. But again, if you get a stud right tackle with a top 10 pick, that would still be worth it if he's going to play for you for 10 years.
So who do you think will grab him?
I don't know. I think that he might be a guy that falls because I have heard from everyone that the Giants love Christian Wirfs. And I know that Arizona likes Becton's upside, and being that athletic guy that can move probably a little better than Wills. I think that Becton could be the pick. So Wills could be the first guy off the board. It could be as high as the Giants, or it could be the third guy off the board, and he could be in the early, just after 10, maybe the Jets at 11, with somebody, maybe Cleveland at 10, somewhere in that range. But I would guess that he is off the board at the latest, the absolute latest, with the Tampa Bay Bucks pick at 15.
Strong tackle class, as I said. So four first rounders so far. Xavier McKinney, the safety. I love the guy. I thought he was a terrific football player at Alabama. Can cover, is a big hitter, has that good size and physicality. I think he's a first rounder. Do you agree?
I agree. I think he's going to be somewhere in the late first, early second range. I think that he is solid in every category, but he's also unspectacular. So I don't think he's going to be that guy that even Derwin James fell to the late teens. So safeties just haven't been recently valued very highly unless they're a really special player like Derwin James was. And I don't think McKinney falls into that category, but I also think he's going to be a very solid guy. You can play him at strong safety, you can play him at free. You can play cover two with him. So I think he's a guy that can do anything. And like you said, he isn't afraid to come up and hit. So I think that for a playoff team that needs to solidify their back end, he'd be the perfect pick.
Cowboys have been mentioned with him. What do you think about that possibility?
I think it's possible. The Cowboys aren't good at hiding what they want in the draft. I would say that if a player like Kinlaw falls, I think that would be their top pick. Caleb Von Chason is another guy that they need edge help, and that would be a boomer bust pick, but with a weak edge class, that could be the pick there. Otherwise, I think it would be safety or corner for them. If C.J. Henderson fell, it kind of depends always on who falls, but Dave McKinney is certainly an option for them there at 17.
All right, Kennedy. So that would be 5 first-rounders for Alabama, which is outstanding. Now we're getting into some fringe guys who certainly are going to be, drafted on, I think, the second day at worst. But I still see some drafts that have Trayvon Diggs, the cornerback, including Dane Brugler's, have him in the first round. I don't think Trayvon Diggs is a first-round quarterback. I'm not a draft analyst, so I'm going to obviously get your opinion, but I think he's a nice player. I think he's got a lot of potential. I just don't think he was sound enough and good enough at the college level to project as a first-rounder. What do you say?
I absolutely agree. I think he's a second-round player. I think he could drop a little bit from there as well. I mean, as deep as the wide receiver class is, it's almost matched by the cornerback class. And it's kind of an ice cream flavor type thing, who you're looking for, really. I think Diggs is unrefined, and I think that teams might be looking for a guy that's more solid right from the outset. But he also does have prototypical size and twitch. People don't really move. Our corners don't really move like he does very often. So
right.
He has a very high upside. But again, it's that, do you want somebody to come in and be able to start right away, or are you looking a couple years down the line? So I think second, maybe he drops to the third just because of that lack of refinement, but I think second solid for him.
I do too. I if I were a draft analyst, I'd give him a second-round grade. All right, to me, a very interesting player that we're going to cover next, and that's Terrell Lewis, because you can't fall in love with just the way a guy looks because they don't play with their shirt off in the NFL. I mean, when Andre Smith came out of Alabama, I was on a show, and a guy kept saying, "Man, he looks so sloppy." I said, "Well, look how he plays. That's what you need to be watching." But if Terrell Lewis takes his shirt off, Kennedy, he's one of those guys you'll want to draft him. I mean, he is 6'5", plus 260 pounds. I don't know what his body fat is, probably 4 or 5%. I mean, he is ripped. You see his potential. If you drew up a pass rushing edge guy, he would be it before but he's got an injury history. But he flashed enough that I think teams look at his potential and say, man, he could be awesome. I think they also look at the tape and say, well, he went 9-10 plays and didn't even make an impact. He's a fascinating guy, in my opinion. What about you with Terrell Lewis? What do you think of him as a player, and how do you think he projects in this draft?
It's funny when you talk about guys getting off the bus. Raekwon Davis and Lewis would be two of the guys you want first off. I have both of them as third round picks. Like you said, Lewis is inconsistent. I don't think it's necessarily a motor thing, but it was you don't like players to disappear at times. He reminds me a lot of Jason Pierre-Paul. I was not a huge fan of Jason Pierre-Paul being such a high pick when he was. It's such a boomer bust pick because he has that prototypical size and he can move. He's shown that he can move tremendously. But again, it's that question of, is he going to put it all together? We've seen guys like Barkevious Mingo come in, same kind of thing, get picked high and not really pan out. So because of the ACL, I think Lewis will drop to probably around the third round, but he is definitely a boomer bust pick that could end up being a double-digit sack guy if he puts it all together.
And now to Raekwon Davis, and you're right. I mean, this is the guy I want first on getting off the bus because he's going to scare somebody. I mean, you shake his hand, your hand, at least my hand, just disappears. I mean, huge hands, 6'7", 300-plus pounds, not fat, and has at times just been a dominant guy. And at other times, not so much. But, NFL guys, these NFL personnel people, when they see someone like Raekwon Davis stand there, they're fascinated because of the physical gifts that he has. And he has played enough good football that you look at him, I think, and say, man, if the light switch ever goes off, he has all-pro potential, I think. But he had All-American potential, and he wasn't an All-American. What do you make of a guy like that who has so much ability, so many physical gifts, and at times is just a dominant player, and at other times, much like Lewis, I mean, he gets blocked and he gets knocked off the ball, and he doesn't do what you would think he could do anytime he wants to.
Yeah, as strange as the times are now, we kind of lose track of time and what day it is. I think it was 1985. He'd probably be a top 10 pick. He's a run stuffer. Mm-hmm. His size is hard to deal with. So, I think at the very least you're getting a solid starter as a 3-4 defensive end, a 5 technique, a guy that can really stop the run. He did get pushed off the ball a little bit, but I think some of those have been a little bit overblown. He was double teamed a lot, and he was getting kind of chipped and moved that way a lot. But I think he's going to be a solid player against the run. Against the pass, his hand movement was kind of slow and lacking. And again, if he puts that together with his run capabilities, he could be a very good player. But I think right now I see his best fit with the 3-4 team as a defensive end, and I think he'd be a really solid third-round pick.
Do you think somebody might, though, grab him in the second round, again, because of the physical size and stature? I'm with you. I think third is safe for him, but I could see a team late second round saying, "Boy, Raekwon Davis, man, we can make something special out of him." You think there's a possibility he could move up into the second round?
Certainly, I think teams that use bigger defensive linemen, like San Francisco does, the Patriots do, and any of the Patriot disciples like to use bigger defensive linemen that they can kind of move around the line. If San Francisco doesn't take a defensive tackle in the first round to replace, I'm like, the name that they traded to the Colts, DeForest Buckner, then maybe later rounds they'd look at a guy like Raekwon Davis. But, I think late second round is possible, again, for one of those teams that's already a playoff team, but I would feel more comfortable with that.
Kennedy Paynter, our guest from drafttech.com, going through the Alabama draft hopefuls. Couple more minutes with Kennedy. All right, now we get to Anthony Jennings, who's a little bit different in Lewis and Davis in that he's he's a good, solid, physically fit football player, but he's not as tall. He's not quite as athletic, but he is just a solid guy all the way around. Good locker room presence, good hard-nosed football player. I think he's going to play in the National Football League. I think you're probably going to, I hate to put words in your mouth, but I'm going to make a guess at what you're going to say is. I think you're probably going to say he's a 4th or 5th round pick. Am I right?
Yeah, I have him in 5th. He's a 5th round pick for me, not because of anything he's necessarily lacking besides his size and his frame. I like him. I think he sets a pretty good edge for his size. I think he has a good nose for the ball. He's good against the run. Kind of like Ryan Anderson, actually, coming out. And Ryan Anderson's kind of settled into the role with the Redskins where he's almost more of a weak side linebacker. He can play strong side as well. I think he's more of a run guy, on a run and chase guy, than he is an edge player. So I think if you're drafting him as an edge player, that's a mistake. I think that if he's falling down into that 5th round range, he could be a great special teams guy. Like you said, he's great in the locker room, and he could be a developmental weak side linebacker for you.
All right, final prospect is Shyheim Carter. He did get an invite to the Combine, which was big for him. He's another one of these guys that's a high-character guy. He's played all over the field in the secondary. Maybe he doesn't have the ideal measurements, although he's good size at 6 feet 191, not the fastest guy. Does Shyheim Carter get drafted, in your opinion, or is he going to wind up being a free agent guy?
I think if I had to bet, I'd say he's a 7th round pick, a late flyer guy. Players in Alabama, they're already pros, really. They've already kind of gotten to the place where they understand their role on the team. They understand their role in the locker room. I think that he is kind of a safety that's trapped in a corner's body. He doesn't really have the movement skills to play corner, and then he doesn't really have the range to play safety. So he's kind of stuck in between.
Right.
But as a core special teamer, I think that, he's going to stick somewhere. I mean, if you think about Levi Wallace, all these guys that have come out of Alabama that didn't have the size or didn't have the speed, Levi Wallace started almost the whole year this year for the Buffalo Bills and played well. So I think these guys, they know coming out of Alabama with Saban, they're already pros, and they're going to come in and they're going to have the right mentality. And whether he is a 7th round pick or a free agent, he's going to stick on a roster. Outstanding
stuff. Appreciate it, Kennedy. Again, you can get Kennedy's info at drafttech.com. Give them a little more info on Twitter and how they can follow you.
Sure. I'm just at Kennedy Paynter on Twitter and Draft Tech. We just put out our final mock draft. It's a 7-round mock draft, but we commented on the first 2 rounds in full. So it's 2 rounds of fully commented picks. And then next week, we will have another mock draft, but it won't be commented when the draft goes live. The draft is then re-simulated after every single pick. So you could have our site up, and after every pick, you can see who your team is slotted to pick all the way through the draft. Once it gets to the 5th round or so, it gets a little sketchy with the reloads because of sometimes random players are picked. But first, second, third round, first 2 nights should be really great and fun, kind of re-simulating the draft as it happens live.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Kennedy.
Thank you.